I am nobody, what it really means in Buddhism. No self, no burden. The deep freedom of Anattā. I am nobody. This simple phrase may sound strange, even unsettling at first. In a world where we're constantly told to be someone, to define ourselves, to achieve and accumulate, the idea of being nobody feels like the exact opposite of everything we've been taught. But this isn't a rejection of life, nor is it a statement of low self-worth. On the contrary, it's a doorway to deep freedom. It expresses the very essence of one of the Buddha's most radical and liberating insights: Anattā, not self. The Buddha taught that everything in existence shares three universal characteristics, known as the three marks of existence: tilakkhana, impermanence, anicca, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, anattā. Of these, anattā is perhaps the most challenging, yet the most transformative. It means there is no permanent, independent, unchanging self at the core of our being. The I we cling to, defend, and constantly try to improve is not a solid thing. It is a process, fluid, conditioned, and ever-changing. So what exactly are we, if not a self? The Buddha explained that what we call me is simply a convenient label for a combination of five constantly shifting elements, known as the five aggregates: pañcakkhanda, form, rupa, the physical body and the material world; feeling, vedana, sensations that arise, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral; perception, sañña, the recognition and labeling of experience; mental formations, sankhara, thoughts, intentions, emotions, and volitions, the dynamic patterns that shape our behavior and generate karma; consciousness, vijñāna, the bare awareness of experience through the senses and the mind. None of these aggregates, individually or together, constitute a self. They are like parts of a flowing river, always moving, never the same. We call it a river, but there's no fixed thing there, only movement. In the same way, we say I, but there's no unchanging core behind it, just a stream of conditions. This is not mere theory. It's a direct challenge to the deeply rooted habit called self-view, sakkaya ditthi, the belief that this is me, this is mine, this is myself. And according to the Buddha, this is the root of suffering. When we cling to body, feelings, thoughts, or identity as mine, we set ourselves up for fear, frustration, and loss, because all these things change. Now, a natural question arises. If there's no self, then who practices? Who creates karma? Who gets reborn? These are deep questions, and the Buddha addressed them not by pointing to a hidden essence, but by revealing the nature of continuity itself. There is no eternal soul, atta, passing from life to life. Instead, there is a continuous stream of cause and effect, a mind stream, vijñāna sota, and karma stream, kamma sota, flowing from one moment to the next. Think of one candle lighting another. The new flame is not identical to the old, but it depends on it. In the same way, our actions condition future experiences. There is continuity, but no permanent entity moving through time. When someone asked the Buddha, "Who feels?" he replied by pointing back to the process. Conditioned by contact, feeling arises. He wanted us to stop imagining a hidden feeler behind the feeling, or a fixed doer behind the doing. Everything unfolds based on conditions. Understanding this truth doesn't mean becoming passive. It means seeing clearly. Seeing that there is suffering, but no separate sufferer. That there is doing, but no fixed doer. And this clarity opens the door to freedom. The insight into not-self leads to disenchantment, nibbida. Not depression or nihilism, but a healthy letting go. We no longer chase fleeting identities or grasp at impermanent things for lasting happiness. This leads to dispassion, viraga, the fading of craving. And from that comes liberation, vimutti, the end of suffering. The Buddha said it directly in the Majjhima Nikaya. Nothing whatsoever should be clung to as I or mine. And in the Dhammapada, all phenomena are not self. When one sees this with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted, and thus attains purity. I am nobody isn't a rejection of life. It's a release from the prison of clinging. A realization that we don't need to hold ourselves together so tightly. That freedom doesn't come from constructing a better identity, but from seeing through the illusion of identity itself. As the scholar-monk Walpola Rahula once wrote, Anattā is the unique doctrine of Buddhism. It denies all concepts of a metaphysical, unchanging self. It may seem confronting at first, but it is the path to peace. When we stop identifying with what we're not, we begin to live from what we truly are, open, present, and free. What it's not. Common misunderstandings about no self. The phrase, I am nobody, can feel unsettling at first. If taken the wrong way, it may sound like a denial of existence, a rejection of meaning, or even a form of psychological detachment. But that's not what the Buddha meant. The teaching of anatta, not self, isn't a negation of life. It's a radical shift in how we see life. One of the most common misconceptions is to confuse anatta with nihilism, the belief that nothing matters, that life has no meaning or value. But the Buddha didn't teach that life is meaningless. On the contrary, he taught that life is deeply meaningful precisely because it is impermanent, conditioned, and interconnected. The insight of not self doesn't drain life of color. It removes the illusion of a fixed self at the center of experience. And in doing so, it opens us to a more vivid, intimate, and honest encounter with reality. This is what the Buddha called the middle way, avoiding the two extremes of eternalism, clinging to a permanent soul, and annihilationism, believing that nothing persists or matters. We don't need to hold on to a metaphysical I in order to live ethically or meaningfully. Meaning emerges not from identity, but from presence, from the potential for liberation, from the reality of suffering, and from the compassion that naturally arises when we see things clearly. Unlike some Western philosophers, like Nietzsche, who saw into the void of meaning and recoiled in despair, the Buddha looked into the same emptiness and found peace. To him, emptiness, sunyata, was not bleak or cold. It was spacious, open, a path to freedom. The absence of a fixed self didn't mean nothing had value. It meant we could finally see what truly matters, free from the distortions of ego and grasping. Another fear that often arises is ethical. If there's no self, then who is responsible for anything? Why should we care about right and wrong? But here too, the Buddhist view is precise. Karma, the law of cause and effect, continues to operate, not because there's a soul carrying actions forward, but because intentions and actions shape the stream of experience. The process continues, just like a seed grows into a tree, even though the seed disappears. There doesn't need to be an unchanging me for consequences to unfold. In fact, the absence of a separate self deepens ethical awareness. When we realize we are not as separate as we think, the boundary between self and other begins to dissolve. Suffering no longer belongs to you or me. It simply exists. And this recognition gives rise to a compassion that isn't based on identification, but on understanding. We care for others not because they are like us, but because there is no fundamental separation. Kindness flows naturally from clarity. This clarity is not abstract or mystical. It shows up in the mind directly. In fact, modern neuroscience has begun to observe that in deep meditative states, particularly among experienced practitioners, activity in the default mode network, the brain region associated with self-referential thinking, tends to quiet down. That constant background hum of me, my problems, my past, and my future grows still. And in its place, a spacious awareness emerges, not blank or numb, but vivid and open. It's not the emptiness of nothingness, it's the emptiness of obstruction, a mind without clinging. Still, it's important to say that "I am nobody" is not just a poetic or feel-good slogan. In Buddhism, it is rooted in a rigorous and transformative path. The insight of anatta rests on careful observation, ethical living, sila, deep concentration, samadhi, and profound wisdom, paññā. It's not a vague mystical intuition. It's the fruit of seeing directly into the nature of mind and experience, as systematically described in the Abhidhamma and countless suttas. This is not about temporary peace or personal empowerment. It's about full liberation from the ignorance, craving, and clinging that bind us to suffering. Where Western philosophy might begin with, "I think, therefore I am," the Dhamma quietly replies, "Thinking arises, but no thinker is found." The thought is real, but the thinker is just a mirage. So what remains when the self dissolves? Not despair, not numbness. What remains is peace. What remains is the gentle, unshakable knowing that we no longer need to hold ourselves together so tightly. We don't need to prove we exist. We simply are, moment by moment, free from illusion. Not self doesn't erase the world. It allows us to meet it, fully and honestly, maybe for the first time. Living I am nobody in the real world. If there is no fixed I, then how do we live in a world that constantly asks, "Who are you?" A world that expects you to have a strong identity, take responsibility, and play your part. This is where the Buddhist understanding of two truths becomes essential. Conventional truth, sammuti-saka, and ultimate truth, paramattha-saka. On the conventional level, you still have a name. You still go to work, care for your family, and follow the law. You don't drop out of life. I am nobody is not an excuse for irresponsibility or passivity. It means you live in the world, but no longer cling to your roles as fixed or absolute. At the ultimate level, you recognize that these roles, parent, worker, citizen, are temporary functions, not who you truly are. There is no solid self behind them, only changing conditions. This insight doesn't remove your responsibilities. It transforms how you carry them. You begin to act without the stress of constantly defending an identity. You do what needs to be done, but without the inner struggle of me and mine. Let's make this practical. You receive harsh criticism at work. Your first reaction might be, "I'm hurt. I've failed." But with the wisdom of not-self, you pause. You notice there's a sound, a tightening in the chest, thoughts of self-blame. But where is the fixed I that is being attacked? You see it's just sensations, emotions, thoughts, rising and falling. You don't suppress your feelings, but you also don't build a wounded identity around them. You can respond wisely, rather than react defensively. Or consider the pressure to be somebody in a society obsessed with image, status, followers, brands. Without mindfulness, this becomes a constant chase, never enough. But when you deeply see that there is nobody solid to build up or defend, something shifts. You can still work hard, still succeed, but your motivation changes. You care more about the quality of your effort than how it reflects on your ego. You serve the task, not the self. Take parenting. Many parents unconsciously project their own desires onto their children. My child must succeed, or I'm a failure. But if you truly live, I am nobody, you stop using your child to complete your identity. You love more freely. You guide without controlling. You support their path without clinging to a story of me and mine. It's a parenting rooted in wisdom, not ego. In a time of extreme individualism and digital self-performance, this teaching may sound radical, but it is deeply healing. I am nobody is not nihilism. It's a return to simplicity. It frees you from the exhausting pressure to constantly define yourself. You're no longer trapped by other people's opinions or your own stories. And how do we truly realize this, not just as a nice idea? The Buddha's answer is clear. Through direct experience, especially in vipassana meditation, insight meditation. You sit, you observe, the body breathes, a sound arises, a memory comes and goes, a feeling tightens, then softens. You begin to see that none of these are you. There is just a stream of changing phenomena, without a self behind it. This is not philosophy. It's not trance. It's clear seeing. And with that seeing comes freedom. The end of self, the beginning of freedom. If we truly understand I am nobody, what lies at the heart of this insight? The answer is simple and profound. Freedom. What the Buddha called nibbana. Not a mysterious state far away, reserved for monks in caves or saints on mountaintops, but the complete end of greed, hatred, and delusion, the deep roots of all suffering. Enlightenment is not about becoming someone greater or more special. It's about no longer being trapped in the illusion of someone to defend. When this illusion fades, peace naturally arises. Not a peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but an unshakable stillness, even in the middle of life's storms. Compassion, too, becomes boundless. Not because we're trying to be good, but because the walls between self and other fall away. Now, someone might ask, if enlightenment means letting go of the self, how do we know it's not just another illusion? That's a powerful question. And the answer is this: awakening isn't something to be proven with logic. It's something you see for yourself. 𝐂𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐵𝐵 veditabo vinyuhi. to be known individually by the wise. Like tasting a fruit, no amount of description can replace the taste itself. That's why I am nobody is not a final answer. It's a skillful tool, a way of looking, a finger pointing to something beyond words. The phrase helps loosen our grip on the stories we tell about me and mine. But what it points to is direct and real, the falling away of suffering. Illusions confuse us. Enlightenment clarifies. It's not another identity. It's the dropping of all identities. And this isn't just theory. When someone truly sees not self, you can sense it. Not through their beliefs, but through how they live. Their mind is steady. Their heart is kind. They don't act out of jealousy or fear. There's a simplicity, a humility, a natural warmth. No show, no struggle, just presence. Of course, we live in a world that still uses I and you, and even the Buddha spoke in this way. When he said, "I am the awakened one," it wasn't because he clung to that identity. It was just conventional speech, a way to teach. His mind had already gone beyond all selfing. So when he said I, it was like an actor playing a role, without being fooled by the costume. We say, "I suffer," or "I am happy." But through the lens of Anattā, we see that suffering is just a process. Feelings arise and pass away. The body aches, the mind reacts. But when we stop clinging to the idea that this pain is mine, the suffering changes. It becomes lighter, less sticky, less personal. Suffering still happens, but it no longer defines us. And perhaps you wonder, can an ordinary person really live this? Absolutely. This path isn't just for monks. It begins right here, in daily life. When you pause and notice a thought arise, or a feeling pass away, and realize, I didn't create this. It's just happening. That's the seed of wisdom. Over time, with mindfulness, with ethical living, with calm and clarity, this insight grows deeper. Slowly, we loosen the chains. Even the modern obsession with self, with image, identity, status, shows us how exhausting the self can be. The need to be somebody wears us down. We chase titles, likes, brands, only to feel emptier. And so, many people today are starting to look inward, not to escape the world, but to rediscover something more real. I am nobody speaks to that longing, not for erasure, but for release. This is a different kind of freedom than what we usually talk about. Western ideas often define freedom as having more choices. But Buddhist freedom is the freedom from compulsive choosing, from craving, from fear, from ego. It's the ability to act without being driven, to live with clarity, not compulsion. Even if all choices are available to you, if you're still a prisoner of desire, you're not truly free. True freedom is inner. So in the end, I am nobody isn't a statement of despair. It's a doorway. It doesn't erase your life. It clarifies it. It doesn't numb your heart. It opens it. It doesn't make you less alive. It lets you live more fully, without the weight of pretending to be someone you're not. This is what the Buddha discovered, and what he invited others to discover for themselves. Not as a belief to adopt, but as a truth to see. 𝐿. Come and see. Try it. Sit quietly. Observe your mind. Let go of the story, even just for a moment. What remains is something simple, peaceful, and profoundly real.